right, people. Welcome back to another episode of ShiftED podcast. Well, you will not believe where I'm going to right now, or bringing you guys with me. We are actually headed to down under. We're headed over to Australia. I have the wonderful Dr. Laura Tuohilampi. Um,
Thank you.
and Laura's coming in. She works at the University of New South Wales. A book writer, a researcher, an intellect, a mathematician. And I found Laura on LinkedIn and I reached out. She gracefully accepted my invitation to come here because I do think math is in need of some conversation and in need of some exposure. Um, and, typically I think, oh, I'm going to, I have to find some old white guy that can tell us about math. And not at all. And to my amazement and my pleasure, I've been doing a big deep dive into Laura's work, and we've got something special for you today. So, Laura, thank you so much for hopping on here in your early morning and my evening to share some of your thoughts on the teaching of math to our kids or our students.
Mm. Thank you
Um,
so much, Rick.
well, it's a real pleasure. Now, Laura, I just want to start off this. You say maths with plural, right? We always see here in Canada, it's math teaching, math class, etc. Where does the S come from? I mean, I hope I'm not sounding too ignorant, but what's the origin of why would there be an S at the end?
Oh, I love that question. I come originally from Finland, and I was ignorant as well. I first moved to Australia, and I was using math actually as I was, more exposed to that version.
Mhm.
And then I actually got one teacher correcting me and telling that in Australia we use maths, and it's like an American version to not use the S in, at the end of it. So
Okay.
that's the explanation.
There we go. Very great. Um, and I guess my first question is, and I kind of want to dive back into your time as a youngster yourself. What were those moments in your early education where math was, and I've read that you were always very into math and it was something that
Mm.
you were attracted to and you were good at. What were some of those early moments where you realized math was going to be a path that perhaps I could take as a career or leading me into the future?
Oh, that's a very good question because there were definitely multiple moments like that. The first one maybe being when I was on the second grade and I was able to see the answer to this complicated, mathematical question, but the teacher wasn't happy for me to know the answer because she had like a specific teaching strategy in mind.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of like a misunderstanding, I guess, because I was so keen to show that I actually know the answer, but she wanted us to go slowly. And while I understand that approach, it made me think about like all those, different approaches to teaching mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also punished for
Oh,
telling the
well,
answer
that
too
will
soon. So,
leave a memory.
yeah, I ended up standing in front of the class for 40
Right.
minutes as an 8 years old, girl. So I had 40 minutes to think about, pedagogical strategies in mathematics. I was always very into science and mathematics. I read, scientific books and quantum mechanics and things like that at a very early age. But at the same time, I wasn't like I did get like A's, but I get like A minus, not like
Mm.
a full A. So I always thought that maybe I should be like a genius to do mathematics. Like maybe I can't actually make this my career because I don't do like I always make a little error or mistake or something,
Right. Right.
and that's another kind of like an important thing that made me better understand that we really need more versatile role models and
Right.
more maybe like comprehensive approach to mathematics, because oftentimes when you actually learn deeply and you're very into something, you do make mistakes. That's
Mm-hmm.
how you learn. And sometimes if you just kind of like get everything from the onset, you don't develop this competence of overcoming challenges and all kinds of things. So yeah.
Yeah.
um
Totally. I love you saying that too, because it seems like math there's a right and there's a wrong, right? Like, you
Mm.
get it, you get your A, or you fail when you get your F. What is, if you could explain it to us, at the root of teaching math to kids? Now, I understand that numeracy is important, as a skill, as a competency to have.
Mm.
But math always seems to be this overarching subject in elementary school as much as in high school, that it's the subject. It's like the important subject. And it,
Mm.
the teachers that tend to teach it seem to, be a little bit more focused on the content and like, um, not really wanting to explore competency base or skill development. It's like, no, the
Yep.
stuff, the stuff. Can you
Yeah.
unpack that a bit for us, Laura?
Yeah, I find it a very short-sighted strategy because, well, first of all, we do have this normalization of, students becoming anxious about mathematics, opting out from mathematics, even hating, mathematics, or simply being ignorant. Like, I just simply don't want to engage with mathematics longer. And we spend, I'd say, in all countries, we spend more than 1,000 hours, lessons, comprehensive, years only, like from 1 to, I'd say, 9 years.
Right, right.
So it's a lot of, working hours for students and teachers' salaries, textbooks, all those things. And with the outcomes of, just passing some exams and then leaving mathematics for forever. At
Right.
the same time, I'd say all people around the world use mathematics all the time. And now I'm not just talking about numbers or number strategies or calculation strategies or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
but things like logical reasoning, what can be interpreted from this data, like how am I being impacted by advertisements, political, messaging, those kinds of things, and even things like geometrical, um, like spatial thinking, such as like
Right,
how am I decorating my house, like what am I, how I'm gonna my removal, how am I able to get my couch out of
right.
the
Totally.
door, and
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Mm.
And like when I observe people, I see them using mathematics in this broad sense all the time, and yet feeling horrible about their actual, mathematical, like numeracy
Right,
skills.
right.
And interestingly, I just collected data of students asking whether they feel themselves as maths person or not, and every single one of them said no, like I'm not a maths person. Who would ever be, call themselves a maths person?
Yeah.
and and we did go through some situations where they used mathematics like brilliantly, like use sophisticated approaches, strategies, logical thinking, reasoning, and so on. And they all said that they feel very confident and competent in those situations, and they call them like my world, my maths world. And in that the world, I actually like when I'm, planning my travels, or maybe I'm like doing my workout, planning or designing,
Totally.
or, any kind of like, real
Right,
life,
right.
mathematics usage, and feeling like, of course, like I do, like, of course I can trust my mathematics skills. Like I'm great. But then like we went back to kind of like the memories of, learning those skills in the maths class and thinking about like kind of like doing it in a more mathematical or official or structured way. And like immediately the confidence crushes. And it's like,
Yeah,
but in that situation, I wouldn't feel confident. I wouldn't feel confident. So there's this weird mismatch.
yeah,
And yeah, that comes
yeah.
from just like, focusing on like, can you do this one, whatever task, closed, question perfectly?
Right.
And not just,
Right.
thinking that in real life, when we do things, we actually can like almost do them. We're not doing things perfectly all the time. We use
Sure.
estimation. We kind of like account for, there's going to be a little range of error, and we understand how to, deal with that.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
largely missing in maths classrooms. And
Yeah.
yep.
And from what I've seen too, and I've been in education my whole life, as you have, I mean, we see that kids in elementary school, so our younger learners going into high school already convinced they're horrible at math,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
I will say that I see more on girls feeling that too. Like I just no, I don't do math. Don't do it. Can't do it. And right away they have this fixed mindset that
Mm.
no good at it. How do you start to unravel that? Because what I've seen also is that in elementary schools, we often don't have math experts, right? And they're kind of like figuring it out themselves as they're going through,
Yep.
which is fine, but that they're going to make errors and there's going to be mistakes made, and it might not be the most confident teacher teaching math
Hmm.
because they just don't feel they have that. So we kind of start planting the seed earlier so that when they hit high school, when there's high stakes tests and graduations and all of that
Hmm.
coming, they've already made their minds up. What can we do to unravel or prevent or
Yep.
minimize that impact on our kids as they're growing through formalized education in elementary school?
Thanks for this question. It's a global issue and we face it
Yeah.
everywhere. And the usual solution to this has typically been, let's either bring maths experts to, primary
Yep.
stages, or let's just, upskill, primary teachers' mathematical skills. But I'm actually gonna, disagree with that. So while, knowledge of
Please.
mathematics is always important and like there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with obviously like increasing teachers' mathematical competences, but like there's another reason that is more, or issue or problem that is more pending,
Mhm.
which is those teachers' relationship with mathematics.
Mhm.
Like you said, like many of the teachers struggle themselves. They might have had, difficult negative experiences. They struggle with their confidence. So
Right.
it's less about like, a teacher not being able to know what a fraction means.
Mhm.
That's not the issue. It's more about like, what if I make a mistake? What if I don't understand, deeply enough these things? So once you have that confidence of, but we can always explore things together. Like this is my understanding. Let's, kind of like discuss these ideas and make new
Right.
discoveries together and having that confidence. But once you feel like I'm not a maths person, I don't actually know how these rules work, it's very difficult.
Right.
And that's why we do it's actually something I've been working on a lot in my own work and also in UNSW,
Mhm.
that we do have for our teacher students courses where we don't start with teaching strategies
Mhm.
or, increasing competences, but, kind of like what is your perception of mathematics
Mhm.
and identifying, like said earlier, like mathematics that you use in your everyday life, like the maths that you already do and feel confident
Right.
with.
Right.
And then you can bring those experiences to the maths, class and make it more like just a normal thing to do,
Right.
something that we just do, like, and then maybe add a little more accuracy and a little more of those like mathematical,
Mhm.
rules and
I like that.
principles on top of what we already do and feel just, normal and confident about.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And what about our youngest learners, Laura? Like, when do you start bringing in concepts or, counting or numbers? And like, I work a lot in preschool, kindergarten areas, and
Mm.
it's always like, when is it time to bring those ideas or play around with those concepts? Is there um any research or information that tells us along the child's development when talking about math can come into play?
Yeah, there's definitely lots of studies showing exactly like how to sequence things and like what building blocks must be, established before you go any further, or when you and especially when you, utilize things like cognitive load theory, like you
Mm.
shouldn't put like too many things uh into the situation at once. But that also again kind of like addresses these more kind of like accurate, like
Mm.
how to make things, perfectly, how to understand the rules and principles perfectly. So I would say this is more about that, would be more about procedural knowledge.
Mm. Mm.
But at the same time, like when you let's talk about multiplication, for instance, and how
Mm.
that kind of like manifests when we work on areas. So we essentially know that there might be, 5 rows of, 4 pebbles, say, or something like that.
Mhm. Mm.
So we can kind of like, bring this multiplication into when we start, understanding what area means. And
Yeah.
obviously you need to understand what multiplication means before that. And you
Mm.
probably need to know what 4 times 5 is in this situation. at the same time, you can like work with 2-year-old kids with Lego blocks, for instance, and just give them like 20 Lego blocks. And like, how can you, or say, 3 years old or 4 years old, maybe not 2 years old, but like, can you build, rectangles out of these, 20
Mm,
blocks? And like, how would they look like? Like, are they all like, are we using the same amount, number of
mm,
blocks for each of these rectangles? Maybe one is building 2 times 10, and another one is building 4 times 5, and so on. So
mm,
kind of like it, in that way, we can kind of like bring those ideas constantly into explorations and investigations, and then like when the time comes, we can then introduce like the actual formula for calculating area, and then we need the multiplication skills, but we can still kind of like instill that foundation from very early on.
yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love what you're saying too, that teachers just have to, you don't have to be an expert. You can explore. You can be
Mm.
curious and show
Yep.
curiosity to your students. And in
Yep.
turn, they might start reflecting those kinds of, you know, skills as well of curiosity and, oh, mistakes are fine and we'll try
Yep.
again and let's problem solve this and figure it out. And I like that can be an approach rather than, focusing on too much on the text and on the workbook and like not understanding it, but just having to go through the
Yep.
routine, which kind of kills that idea that math is everywhere,
Yep.
which you had
Yep.
mentioned before. And when you created, like, you have two, like, well, I saw that Maths for Humans, the one that you have on Australia website. Um, it's such a great resource. What do you hope that information can help teachers with?
Yeah, so the whole kind of like ideology behind math for humans and like, establishing such a concept. Uh, and I do want to mention that the page is still a bit out of date, so I'm going to work on that very soon. But there are some resources there, and I
Mhm,
do post, blog posts and stuff there.
mhm,
But the whole idea is to, as you said in the introduction, that the whole mathematics education needs an overhaul. Like we need to really like think about like how is mathematics education going to serve humankind in the future.
yeah,
So not just kind of like how do we keep like educating new cohorts with these mathematical competences that
mhm,
can nowadays be done with AI. It doesn't
right,
mean that we wouldn't need to have people understanding those principles, but we do have like a very different you know world, and it's only going to change even more.
mhm,
So um like the whole idea of reimagining what mathematics could look like and
mhm,
what are some skills that people really do need. For instance, like I said earlier, better understanding how algorithms work or advertisement work or political messaging works, and
mhm,
how data can be used correctly, but deliberately, choosing, certain numbers or certain trends, or, not lying
mhm,
directly, but just, kind of like giving subtle messages.
mhm,
So all those things are extremely important to, have, critical citizens that can also, be confident in their skills and understanding what is going on, and not be kind of like victims or whatever like other people
right,
say, and just like not really understanding how things actually work. And so,
yeah,
and I think mathematics education, if anything, is the place to develop those skills. Like how do we think,
yeah,
how do we share information, like how do we understand these kind of like numerical data based messages.
right,
So
right,
yeah, so through maths for humans, I'm kind of like free from what is in the syllabus today
right,
and what is in the textbook, for the next lesson, and like really like what are we doing like in 30 years, or like 300 years.
right.
So yeah, that's the
Hopefully we're
idea
not doing the
behind it.
same thing as we're doing now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that we're
yeah,
we're and I love what you said, that we're selling it better. Like, I think our
yes,
messaging is just not so good. And it's
Mm.
very constricted, like it seems like there's one way. And if you don't do it that
Yeah,
way, it's the
yeah,
wrong way.
yeah.
Have you ever heard of computational thinking? The idea from Seymour Papert out of MIT, where there are four main, pattern recognition, decomposition, abstraction, and algorithms, right? It had to
Mm.
do around coding. But I guess my question is the idea of coding, can can that be integrated into math? Possibly. I mean, can math and coding coexist as one instead of it just being math? But I mean, because once you open the doors to coding, there's so much more
Mm.
that you could do. There's so many
Mm.
more, robots and microcontrollers and whatever that you can actually
Yep.
play with. Um, where do you sit on that idea that instead of like formulaic, that we're looking at more of the bigger view of things?
Yes. I'd say there's a- as soon as we can get rid of some ideas that even us educators cannot justify for students, because there are certain mathematical concepts that like students might question like why are we learning this, and nobody can answer that
Right,
question.
right,
So as soon as we reduce the kind of like emphasis of those ideas that we really don't see much relevance longer, there is room for all kinds of new ideas, computational thinking being one of them. And like the whole, again, like the whole idea of how is this kind of like signal based universe working around us at the moment. So
right,
I think it's extremely important to bring that. I don't think we need a new subject.
right.
I think we just need to like broaden the idea of what mathematics entails, what can be like examined under its scope. um but then this just kind of like makes me think of something else that I just noticed when I was doing that data collection of students' maths worlds, where they felt confident and so on.
Mhm.
Because one thing is to utilize mathematics for um, in situations where things actually work pretty neatly. So we know that if I program something, or ask an algorithm to do a certain thing, they will actually do it.
Mm,
So there is like this causational, if I do this then this happens.
right,
Maybe there's a little bit of uncertainty or no likelihood involved. Or if I use this data I get these interpretations or
mm,
conclusions and so on. So kind of like this, the whole kind of like accuracy of mathematics.
mm,
But those students actually, quite a lot of them brought up the concern of how mathematics, historically has been used to also justify biases and like injustice and inequalities when we are just selecting or kind of like maybe putting too much emphasis on numbers or
mm,
patterns or trends,
mm,
and not seeing that things can always be contextual or individual, and that kind of like human aspect.
right.
So kind of like a long long answer to your question. I think there's definitely a need to include things like computational thinking in under the the official maths syllabus. But also I think we need even more like
Mm,
what is the kind of like the little less mathematical human side of again like encountering and dealing with situations that still are based on data and
mhm.
information.
Yeah, excellent. And I guess my last question too, just because it's such a hot topic, and we alluded to it, artificial intelligence before. I mean, it seems like it's taking the world by storm, and education's kind of like, whoa, like, um, where do you see your work evolving with artificial intelligence down the road?
Oh yeah, so I think this is my personal opinion. Like, obviously, we can
Hmm.
use and we can utilize, and I think we're already doing it quite, uh, quite a lot to kind of like equipping AI to teach us.
Hmm.
So it can be a good, just informant. We can, program AI to teach, kids mathematics, whatever, like skills and competences. Uh, but I think it's maybe even more effective if you use AI to increase our confidence and agency. So having it more as a support partner that we're working together with, and we currently just developing a project where we're examining just that, like how can we make AI respond to teachers' needs better in a way that the teacher informs, like what are some of my issues, what are some of my goals, and at the same time, because AI can also um strengthen or confirm certain like biases that the teacher might have. So they might think that a certain strategy is great without noticing that it might be uh not good for certain demographics or certain group of students or something. So there's this risk of AI just kind of like increasing those biases.
Right.
So in this project, we're examining how can AI be programmed so that it can better show for any teacher that goes to asking help or support, like if you do this, this will be some likely what is it like results, and if you do that instead, so this is something that you might expect. So then that gives teacher the the opportunity to make more informed decisions and not just kind of like, can you give me something and the AI is doing the work.
Right, right. It demands critical thinking of the user. It's not just
Yes. Yep.
give me a lesson on math, on fractions.
Yep.
Like it's not,
Yep.
they've got to think about it. Why? What's your intent? What
Yep.
competency you're looking to develop, etc. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think that might be also kind of an avenue for educators to kind of actually start to explore more.
Yeah. And it would kind of like the similar resembling example would be when uh in another project, we helping students use AI in an almost similar way. Uh, that's what we call vertical contextualization. So instead of just, having students to work on their typical tasks, not asking AI to help them or teach them, but asking to envision contexts where certain skills are used, and
Right.
the word vertical contextualization comes from let's envision the future and ask AI to tell us where might we be using these skills in the future. An example being, I was working with year 5 students and they had decimal multiplications or multiplying decimal numbers,
Right.
and they couldn't really say like where would we ever use this, and using vertical contextualization, which is like asking AI, how about 30 years from now, do you think that humans are still using multiplying decimal numbers? And AI can quite nicely give some context. So maybe in this situation or that situation, and the students then choose like, oh, I'm going to have a smart home and I'm going to, need to adjust my,
Right.
temperature or something like that. There I actually have decimal numbers and I need to, use multiplication. So kind of like helping using AI to broaden our imagination
Yeah.
and like helping us to make those connections rather than just simply like, can you teach me this?
Right. I love that. Well, Laura, this has been, I'm just popping now with ideas and thoughts. I really thank you for taking some time and sharing your ideas, and I'm glad that we're exposing math a little bit more. It's a valued subject that needs attention, but maybe some little tweaks along the way to make it more relevant for kids so that they can see that math is important, and they use it every day. I loved how you described those kinds of scenarios. So I wish you all the best. Check out Laura's website. I'll put the information in the descriptor, and also check out her book, Seriously Fun Maths. I'm definitely going to dive into that one, Laura. I wish you all the best in your day. Thanks so much again. And I hope one day we can pick this conversation up. I feel we could talk for another half an hour or
That
so.
would be lovely.
Thanks so much, Laura.
Thank you, Chris.